Hello everybody, I'm Cantonese Cat. Hey everybody, welcome to the weekend. I'm just gonna keep going off for a while until I can't anymore. I have this envisioning video today to talk about 15 successes and 15 failures, with a disclaimer saying that nothing's really that black and white, nothing's really that absolute. Sometimes you have a lot of failures being embedded in successes, and sometimes you have what appears to be failures that may not necessarily be a failure, and that they just may simply not have played out yet, and a lot more patience are required. And it depends on how you define failures. If you think opportunity cost is a big thing, I just need to make money now, well, then good luck with that. I don't have anything else to say. I don't really operate that way. Maybe it's because of my culture. I generally feel more grounded if I suffer through pain somewhat and have some delayed gratification. I don't really like to chase highs. Generally, they seem to be a little bit higher risk for me. And because of that, sometimes I'm early and sometimes I'm too early. And sometimes I can go through a lot of pains. And I have come to embrace them. It's a part of my being, and I don't really have much else to really complain about it. And when I hear other people complain about it, I think it's okay. You can complain about anything you want. It's a free world, for the most part. But I just want to go through some of the successes that I have here to kind of set the tone, to let you know that not all successes comes smooth without pain and without failure. I just want to start out here with Palantir. I want to say that at the beginning of my investment journey, I really don't know too much. I didn't really start charting until maybe around 2022, somewhere around there. Before that, I was trying to gather information. I was more or less kind of financially illiterate. So if you're one of those people who are looking for somebody who's been around the block for like decades and based on, speaking from experience, whatever, then I'm not really for you. But if you're interested in just having like a little bit of a fresh perspective of the market, of somebody who's kind of picked this up over the last few years and is, doing okay, figuring out his journey, if you find it to be relatable, then I guess this is for you. When I first got into Palantir, I really first started buying over here. I bought this monthly candle somewhere up to the 20s, somewhere around there, and I stopped buying as soon as it gets to like the 30s and 40s. I just didn't buy anymore. When I see it dipping down below 20, I start buying again. Again, like not very big buys. To me, it was relatively, decent buys back then because I was mostly just focusing on index funds and whatnot. But for me to be involved in like individual stock positions, it was, a little bit outside my comfort zone. And then as I was kind of seeing the entire market tanking, and I was getting more and more interested in looking at charts, I was looking for charts where you could have maybe a little bit more of like a base forming behavior, meaning that yes, it's a downtrend, but do you have anything to say that, hey, maybe the downtrend here is decelerating here a little bit, right? So for Palantir, I was looking at a little bit of a deceleration here, starting around mid 2022. It seems like there could be a little bit of a decent slowdown here in terms of downward momentum. You see that as price is going down, you start developing a lot of these, increase in RSI. Even when this downtrend over here, the RSI actually was going up. So you have you can see, basically you see a deceleration of the bear trend. Everybody gets all scared, everybody gets all upset, and I see a deceleration of the bear trend. It looks like this could be a base forming behavior. It looks like it could be an opportunity to buy. The base sometimes can last for a long time. Here, in the case of Palantir, it didn't last that long. From when you start to have RSI trending up, which is starting around February 2022, to when it actually broke out of the bear trend, which is probably arguably around early to mid 2023. It only lasts for maybe about 12 to 18 months. It's not bad at all. But yeah, a lot of people are feeling a lot of suffering. So I have these bookmarks here. I used to have an old X account that I post from. I don't have that account anymore. I save all my files from there. And I did a lot of charts on my old account. As old as back in September of 2022, I came up with this chart where I was basically looking at patterns. It looks like there's a little bit of a mirroring fractal here, where you have a little bit of distribution pattern here, and when it gets down here, it looks a little bit more like an accumulation pattern. This pattern turned out to be pretty well in terms of, defining what the price action ended up happening. I also have this chart here that I came up with really back in 2022 in July, and I was looking at this fractal. It looks like we have an upward channel here, probably going to come back down and do a little bit more accumulation over here with a little bit of invert head and shoulder, a little bit of an Adam and Eve type pattern here, which essentially worked out here, and the rest is history, right? With that said, I just want to say during this time, a lot of people were extremely bitter with this stock. They're looking at fundamentals. Initially, they were looking at growth rates that would actually somewhat justify the price action if you believe that they were actually going to say that they're going to grow to where they want to go. But because of reduction in global liquidity and because of quantitative tightening, money got sucked out of the system. And growth rates just wasn't there. And everybody got really bitter during every single earnings report, basically. I remember back in December 2022, when price was really attractive at that time, that was bottoming right there around $6. The earnings came out, it was absolutely horrible because they weren't growing at all. With that said, the base formation is looking more and more beautiful, and it just looks like that could be the bottom there. I was trying to buy the bottom, right, throughout the entire time over here. I was accumulating because I thought it was accumulation zone, and it just kept on beating me up and beating me up and beating me up. At some point, I was down about 30 to 40% down here. And it was what it was, and I just decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to keep accumulating. It is what it is. And ultimately, it worked out pretty well, and I continue to chart Palantir over time. I have been buying Palantir obsessively, and this is how I have accumulated Palantir. I bought at the beginning, I bought at the dip, and I bought the dip, and as soon as it got down to below the teens, I was just kept buying, and as soon as it came out from it, I kept buying. I don't think I really ever stopped buying until the price got to around mid-20s or higher. Then that's when I perceived that the risk is higher, and I stopped buying. And the only other time I bought was just bought a little bit over here around like $100. Eventually went down to 60 anyway. So I was wrong to buy there, I guess. Now price is up into 170. I guess it doesn't really matter. My call space is around 15.6. Did pretty well for myself. Ultimately, it was a success story. Was it a success story back in December 2022? Heck no. It was terrible. Does it matter at the end? Well, I'm not a big trader. I think it didn't really matter to me at the end because it turned out to be pretty decent. But that's just kind of what I did. Now, on top of trying to chart, trying to figure out what's going on, I think I used to chart this in like Yahoo Finance or something like that. It looked absolutely horrible. And then I started basically just following, and it seems like it's doing what I was thinking it would do. So I kept charting this. At some point, I was looking in July 2023, and price is getting rejected here around the mid-teens. A lot of people think it has to go back down to $8. I didn't think so. I thought it was probably either going to backtest this trend line here, or backtest this horizontal line here, or just go higher and then go up, and that would be the bullish case. It turned out to basically just follow my base case pretty much like exactly it is. So I gained more confidence in terms of charting Palantir. And whenever Palantir got to the point of the 20s, again, everybody was saying, oh, it's going to go back down to the teens. It's going to go back down to 8. This is a distribution pattern. I was eyeing this zone. I was thinking, this is a big liquidity zone. I spent about a whole year trying to break through. Wasn't able to. So it's not going to push through right away. It's going to get rejected. It's going to come back test a zone here. How long does it take? I don't know. And at that time, you already have another stock that has broken out, which is MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy has already kind of broken out of that liquidity zone over here. So I was looking, I was saying, you know what? if MicroStrategy is able to break out, there's enough liquidity available for something like MicroStrategy breakout to happen, then there should be a very similar pattern here that should be enough liquidity for a positively trending stock like Palantir to potentially break out. And sure enough, the rest is history, right? About a year or so later, or actually about half a year later, Palantir has finally got to around $37 or so. And everybody was like, you know what? It's reaching a previous all-time high zone over there. You should sell. What are you doing? If you don't sell, you're going to lose money. You don't like money. And I was looking at this and I was saying, hey, you know what? I came out with a whole video in September 2024 basically telling you why you might regret selling Palantir shares over the next 12 months or so. That was September 2021. And to just kind of put you in a little bit of perspective here, September 2021 was around here. Right. Next 12 months, it went up a lot. And I just want to say at this point, I am pretty convinced that I should just do my own thing. I'm going to get things wrong. I'm going to spend a long time talking about how I get things wrong. But at some point, I should just do my own thing and not worry about what other people think. I may be right, I might be wrong, but I'm going to try my best to try to figure out what's going on. The second stock I want to talk about is Tesla. Tesla, I've been purchasing this in the past, and I would call this a success story only because price is in the 400s right now. When price is in the 200s, it was not a success story. It was a failure because at some point I was down 30% underwater. And if you're looking at the way that I bought, I didn't know what I was doing. I was trading in and out Tesla back then. And I started buying a little tiny position here and there around 2022 when I perceived that price was going to be pretty low. But I really seriously started accumulating right around December 2022 to January 2023 because I started charting Tesla and I started seeing good things about it. I started to think that this is a pretty low risk point. And one of the things that I was looking at really was the RSI. You know, I used to use different methods. I thought that the RSI was very, very low. This is actually, matter of fact, it's like unprecedentedly low. And it seemed to be following this fractal of RSI here over and over again during each of these cycles. And I was like, you know what? Time to pull the trigger around 100. Time to pull the trigger around 120. Just do it. See how it goes. You know, risk-reward ratio seems pretty decent here. So I ended up buying that area and turned out to be pretty well for me. Now, with that said, I also had a failure because I have this big, pretty straightforward arrow here from 2023 to 2025. You know, hey, this could be a bottom that Tesla could do what it did before. It was just kind of going to go, straight up, right? So at some point when price got to around, when price recovered from the bottom over here, it got up to around 300. Its trending is causing higher highs and higher lows. Hey, if 300 gets rejected, understandable. Coming back test the cloud here, understandable, right? It's holding clouds, back test the cloud here. It's probably going to bounce off the cloud here from 220s. It's consolidated sideways over here for a long time. I think that was it. We go up higher. Turns out not to be the case. The price ended up going all the way down to 140s. I was wrong, right? I was extremely wrong because price kept going down a lot more. And there's this guy out there, called Tesla Tracker, who's one of my collaborators and friends nowadays. He was sitting at his toilet looking at his phone, and he was inspired by my chart, and he saw that it was probably going to go down here in a little bit of ABC to hit around the 150 zone over there. Ultimately, he was correct. Ultimately, I was wrong. And we were... and I was basically, you know what, you're right, I was wrong. And he was also a pretty nice guy, so we're friends now. To me, that doesn't really matter in terms of whether or not I'm right or wrong, because I still want to have good, buying opportunity. And if I was wrong, I would just keep accumulating. It doesn't really matter to me, right? If I was wrong here because I thought that price is going to keep going up to 300, then okay, I keep my position over here, just let it run. It came back down. Great, fine, whatever. Buy, right? Same thing happened over here too in April 2025, and everybody got all scared. Didn't care. Buy. I was wrong. Buy. It doesn't matter, right? if you're looking at kind of what I was seeing started around April of 2024, this really was the quest to try to find the bottom. And this is one of those quests to find the bottom. There's a lot of imbalance here with volume. You actually see the buy volume over here has been increasing over time, but price kept going down. So there's a lot of imbalance over here. They might be buying over the counter, or the volume just was not justifiable in terms of how the price went down, and it could be easily reversible with just some volume to come back. And sure enough, that was kind of the bottom of that bottom of the local bottom over there. And when I was looking at the local bottom there, I was thinking, okay, if that was the local bottom, if you do waves, that could have been this could have been a greater 1, 2, 3. This could have been the wave 4 correction, and we're getting into wave 5. Wave 5 also subdivided into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That could have been wave 2 of 5 right there. And it certainly seemed like it's playing out since then. And again, I was just kind of showing people, hey, I was accumulating here and I'm accumulating over here, which is exactly what I did over here and over here. To me, it really doesn't matter whether or not I'm right or wrong. And if you're looking right now, what I'm thinking what Tesla's going to do, I think it's probably going to end up maybe outperforming NVIDIA here a little bit, because NVIDIA had a big run. It probably would still do pretty well, but I think it's probably Tesla's turn. This is a NVIDIA over Tesla chart. It looks weak, meaning that NVIDIA is probably going to end up underperforming Tesla here moving forward. So I would consider that to be a little bit of a success story, and I promise the rest of it is going to go a lot faster. SOFI is one that I was extremely wrong about for a long time. And when I was extremely wrong for a long time, what did I do? I kept buying after reassessing whether or not how I was wrong was really wrong in the short term, or is it really wrong in the long term. With this accumulation, my cost average is 7.65. And it was a crazy story in terms of what happened, because back in March of 2023, I was down. I was probably down like, I don't know, like 30, 40%, or maybe even more. I don't remember. And the price of SOFI just kept going down. This is from my old account, March 2023. Banks were failing, and I was buying SOFI. 4 other people bought it with me. Saw a little bit of a diamond bottom over here, which worked out. I think it was going to break out. It's just back testing this zone over here. Bought it $5, $4. Banks are failing. Absolutely crazy, right? The diamond ultimately worked out well. At that time, I was delusional. I thought that price was just going to go all the way up to the 40s, to the 1.618 linear, fib right up there. In 2025, turned out it went to the 30s by the end of 2025. I was too bullish, I guess. But regardless, it's something that when you see a base formation, when you see price going down, when you see everybody being so bearish, it just doesn't make sense to not be bullish. And I have somebody like this to basically, this is something that I keep seeing over and over and over and over again as an influencer. And I can't believe I'm calling myself an influencer, because I really don't feel that way. I see comments like this over and over and over again. This is definitely not happening. It's going down to a certain price, and because of so and so reason. I think I reposted this. This is probably why I got so many views. But yeah, late 2023. Sentiment was extremely horrible. Guess what? It broke out of that diamond, pushed through the Ichimoku cloud, came back down, and I was eyeing that it was going to back test the cloud. It was just going to moon from there, right? Well, did it bounce from the cloud? The answer is yes. Was I right temporarily? Yes. The answer is yes. Well, the issue is after it bounced, it came back, it got rejected here around $10 and then came back down. And eventually came back all the way down to about $6, right? Until July, and then it bounced again. When I was looking at this, I was like, you know what? The pattern actually looked very similar to what Bitcoin did before it ran up from 25,000 all the way to 60,000. And I was seeing a very similar pattern here for SOFI, although I was probably a few months early. And it kept on going down to $6. And I was doubting myself. I was like, what the heck am I doing? I don't understand. Is this going to keep going down? And I was so desperate. By looking at institutional ownership is going up, but price kept going down. By looking at volume going down, saying that there's, exhaustion there. By looking at bullish divergence, looking various indicator, it looks like it would be a logical area to bounce, right? It kept going down to $6. And I kept on coming up to these charts that are more and more complicated, trying to justify my thoughts. And eventually it did work out, but it did take a while. Eventually price went up a lot higher to the high teens, got rejected, came back to around $8 again. And then it's just the rest is history, right? Went up to 30, now it's hovering around the mid 20s. I stopped buying. I was looking at other opportunities because I think the higher it goes, the more risk it is. I was trying to buy other things down here. I'll show you what I was buying back in that dip over there. But it was extremely brutal. And it was not a success story until it was. And it took years to get there. That was my story for SoFi. The rest of them is going to go relatively quickly. This is Shopify. I've been buying it pretty diligently whenever price get down to the 20s. I started buying when it was like 50, 40 or 50. Kept buying this whole giant round bottom over here. Kept buying the dip over here as well. And the rest I just let go. Right now the cost average is maybe around 50. This is one of those charts that I was pretty proud. I basically spotted an inverted head and shoulder pattern, which is extremely easy to spot with a back test, and it worked out pretty well. I even back in October 2022, I was trying to catch a bottom. I was looking at some RSI here. This is again on Yahoo Finance. I was looking at bearish divergence, bullish divergence. Saw a bullish divergence here, saw a bearish divergence here. Okay, price went down, plummeted, now is decelerated with downtrend. Maybe a good time to start adding, right? Because if you compare the chart to Amazon back in the dot-com bubble, you basically are seeing the same thing. It took about 10 years for it to break out into all-time highs again. Maybe Shopify would take about 10 years. No, it took about maybe like 4 or 5 years. Right now it's hovering underneath the previous all-time high and it's looking more and more better. And then looking at Shopify here, I thought that it was just going to touch the blue line here and it was going to bounce. Nope, got that down underneath of it, bullish engulfing back. Same thing happened over and over again with Shopify. I thought it was going to hold the blue line. Nope, came back down, even came down a lot lower and just went up. Does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. Am I right or wrong? I don't care because I just kept buying at the lows. A lot of times when you chart things, you try to come with an idea, but they don't always work out the way that it should. I was eyeing Shopify whenever it dipped all the way down to like the 60s, 70s and came back to this resistance zone. I was eyeing the possibility of it breaking the 0.76 and it could do what very, very similar thing as Palantir did. Ultimately, it didn't really do that, but it did form a very bullish formation here. And right now, price is a lot higher than what it was before. Right now, Shopify is, let's see here. Yeah, right now Shopify is $137, give or take, and it's trying to challenge the previous all-time high here. Matter of fact, already kind of wicked to all-time high here. So as far as I'm concerned, I think this is a success story that will most likely continue. Another success story would be Robinhood. And again, none of these are that straightforward. I started buying my Robinhood position in January 2024, and I only really bought during that Q1, and my cost average is $12. And the reason why I bought was because I was looking at the quarterly chart. You can see how it's forming a big base. This is an inside candle for how many quarters? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 quarters in a row inside candle. With the downtrend exhausted, with the uptrend picking up on increasing volume, this is a great setup. When it breaks above the inside candle over here, is probably going to go a lot higher, right? So I bought, cost average 12, held strong through volatility, now it's $107. If you're looking at Robinhood, and it's not going to be without volatility. It basically got rejected here as expected, 0.86, come back down, back test the Ichimoku Tengen Kijun in the 40s, held. The rest is history, right? Do people want to buy here back in like April of 2025? No. The price went all the way from like the high 60s all the way down to like the high 30s. It was extremely brutal, right? Was it a failure for me in my part? Actually, no, because I bought at 12. But does it matter? Like that's my point. Like, does it even matter? I was even trying to draw a comparison in terms of what Robinhood is doing in terms of what Palantir did. It actually worked out exactly the way it is. You know, I just think that charts are cool. They tell you kind of what could happen, and when they work out, it's great. When they don't work out, well, you know, it doesn't always have to work out the way that you want, as long as you have a plan. I think I have a plan for these, and it worked out well for me. The sixth one here is Affirm. Affirm, I've charted this for a very long time. I have a position for a long time too, for years, and I spotted that Affirm has basically been exiting its stage 1 into stage 2 by breaking out of this 30-week moving average and breaking out of this wedge over here with very convincing volume. RSI broke out as well. That looks fantastic, right? As Affirm kept going, there were a lot of bad narratives. Affirm is a very economically sensitive stock, so the narratives were going to be muckleberries that sell because it's going to go a lot lower. Banks were failing, so these fintech stocks should fail even harder. The stock market's going lower, yen carry trade, tariffs, whatever. All it ultimately did is it went up about 750% from the bottom, with a lot of volatility between anywhere from 40% to 60%. As you would expect with a volatile stock, because volatility is your friend, and you need the volatility to kind of, you know, go higher to deleverage folks, because otherwise everybody's just going to be over leveraged, everything's just going up to the moon. That, you know, it just doesn't work that way. I was also wrong with Affirm for a very long time. I thought that this is it, 1, 2, 3, rising 3 methods is going to go up from here. This is it, right? That's all the retracement you need. This is healthy. I'm very extremely bullish. Guess what? Price went from the mid-30s all the way down to the mid-20s to the low 20s. Over the next few months, I was wrong for months number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, until the 4.5 month, until this bullish engulfing candle that erased all these price action for the last 6 months came in. All it takes just some volume to just kind of come in to vindicate myself. But I was so wrong for so long. I was not right. I was wrong, right? Guess what's happening right now? I think Affirm is following footsteps of Palantir, but it's been about 7 months and it still hasn't really gone Palantiring yet. I think it needs to break about the 0.786 like what Palantir did before going up a lot higher, but it just simply hasn't done that yet. Right now, it's just been, you know, not like the Soviet leader back in the days, but right now it's just been stalling. It's just been stalling. Trying to hold the Shimoku, trying to go up. I'm still very bullish on it, but it still hasn't really broken about the 0.786 over here yet. Doesn't mean that it's a failure? No, because I did spot this early. I'm still bullish on it. Is it okay to wait for a couple of months before it plays out? I think it's fine. This is another chart to show you back in the days of 2023. Double top, right? Well, you're holding a rising 20-week moving average here. Kind of like what Palantir did here. Very similar fractal. So it's going to go up. Certainly, it turned out to work out very well to my favor. Right? That's my 6th one. 7th one I want to talk about is NVDA. For NVIDIA, I never really truly had like a pure position. I was owning a lot of TQQQs, which we can get to in a second. I own a double leverage semiconductor ETF called USD. And I was owning that just because I probably should have bought the market leader, but either way, they trend pretty well together, and I did pretty well with my USD position. And I remember a couple things. One is whenever it was in December 2022 when NVIDIA bottomed. And I'm going to show the NVIDIA chart here to kind of give you a little bit of an impression in terms of what the heck I'm talking about. In December of 2022, it already came up from the bottom. It bottomed in October, came up from the bottom. The prevailing narrative at that time, right now, at that point, was that semiconductor chips, the inventory is at all-time high. There's no demand. They don't know what they're going to do with all these NVIDIA chips. The fundamental is absolutely horrible. And the narrative kept going over the next few months, and everybody was flabbergasted. And they're like, what is going on with price? This is just to show you that liquidity runs the show. This is just to show you that a lot of times whales already know what's going to happen before narratives on the public shifts. And generally, the narratives on the public shifts whenever you end up getting price going a lot higher. I think that was a mistake to think that NVIDIA is fundamentally bad because the chip inventory is at all-time high. They kept talking about it for like half a year over here. Another thing too, and so I was going through back then, was that everybody was talking about this head and shoulder pattern over here. Everybody was saying NVIDIA is overextended, it needs to correct down. Clear head and shoulder pattern, a lot of down arrows down below. And I was one of those advocates to basically saying, I don't think it's going to be a head and shoulder pattern. I think that most of the time it's just bounce off of a very key support level. It's a very powerful bull trend. It's probably going to keep going up higher. So what happens? Well, I think that most are fixated on head and shoulder pattern. Most are fixated on this rounding top pattern. Most are fixated on having some potential daily gap fills down below. But I think it's just waiting for support to come catch up and consolidate before going higher. So this is what I was initially saying, and then as sure enough, it bounced off, get a little bit of trees on top here. I think it's going to come back down and bounce up before going up higher, and sure enough, it did exactly that. And we've been eating into supply for about 3 times now. I thought that we got a beautiful cup and handle here. I think it's probably going to go up higher. Sure enough, it ultimately formed this head and shoulder bicep arm and paw pattern, which is a real thing that I just invented back in May of 2024. I'm trying to illustrate that not all head and shoulder patterns, are that scary. Matter of fact, a lot of them actually don't work out. Fast forward about a year after that, you have this big scare. Price went from the 150s all the way down to the 90s or 80s. We were at the 20-month moving average. The last 2 cycles we broke down underneath and bear market starts. Was this going to be another time where it's going to do that? It's a critical area to hold, right? Well, what happened after that? It ended up holding that area, and the rest is history, right? It ended up just rebounding very well, and the rest is history. If I would have just been saying, you know what, the last 2 cycles is going to break underneath the 20-month moving average, and this time we'll do the same, I would have just completely exited out the market. But I didn't. I stayed in. With that said, that low right there was in, let's see here. I need to backtrack here. That low right there of the 20-month moving average backtest was in April of 2025, right? I started selling my USD position somewhere around January and February there before it got there, because it was indeed looking weak. So this is, I never really had a pure NVIDIA position. I have USD, which is 2x leverage, probably close to about 40% NVIDIA exposure, and I start selling around like January, February. So anyway, that was my story. So I'll take that as another success story that I have. That one was relatively smooth. Well, a couple other, success story, quote. One is IREN. IREN is pretty straightforward. I'm going to just go through here real quick. I've been buying IREN for a very long time. Where is let me pause here for a second. Yeah, this is what I was trying to find. I was telling you my buys. I'm going to go ahead and just tell you how many shares I have. I have around like 1,300 shares. I bought 1,000 shares around like $5. And I just didn't really touch it. And then when I started seeing that it was going to take off, I bought more here around 20. So I have about like 1,300 shares. It doesn't really matter. But that's basically what I did here with IREN. And it was something that I kind of just held on to for a very long time. And whenever I saw, the reason why I was buying up there around like the high teens to low 20s is because I saw that it was Palantiring back around July or August of 2025. It looks like it wants to expand the Bollinger Band. It looks like it wants to break about the 0.86. It looks like it wants to go higher. So I bought more here. Sure enough, worked out pretty well for me. And, and I thought that was going to probably end up getting rejected here around the 1.272, around like, $70-ish for IREN, right? Sure enough, got rejected there, and the rest is history. The question is always how low it can go. Ultimately, a lot of people have a lot of different opinions. People think that it's going to go down a lot lower. One of the support that held was the volume-weighted average price, which I talked about on Danny's Patreon video. Another one was looking at the bullish divergence of the unbalanced volume, and that really tells me I think we're close to a bottom over here. The truth is, it doesn't really matter. You have an inverted head and shoulder pattern here that ultimately worked out pretty well. The truth is, it doesn't really matter. I think the moral of the story is I think a lot of people got really scared at expected level of rejection. A lot of people think it's going to come back down to 28, but not necessarily. So you have other support levels down below. And I think it's okay to try to, catch that short-term falling knife. And I did not do that because I was buying other things, but also kind of just held onto my stock because I didn't sell. Ultimately, I think it's a pretty easy, success story, although it may not be that easy, looking at on hindsight here. Another story I have that was also a big failure was CIFR that eventually became a success because I was buying down here. I was buying for, for a couple of years at the dips here. And when price got to like $7, I was like, great. Nope. Went all the way down to like $1.80, $1.80 or something like that. Ended up buying the dip right at the bottom over there. And actually, that did have a buy right there, close to like $2 right there. And then as it came back, I bought even more over here. It worked out pretty well for me. Got a cost average of about 3.62. Right now, price is around 17.5. So what is a success? What is a failure? I don't think anybody really knows, to be completely honest with you. I don't think it really matters. I started seeing this as a Palantirian candidate back in around September, whenever it started to break about the 0.86 ripple ultimate expansion. I thought it was going to go a lot higher. And I was basically eyeing this, and I keep holding, and there's no reason for me to sell. That's also another one of my success stories, if you will. Couple that, the one that's a little bit more recent is, and I promise I'm not going to spend too much time talking about my successes because I want to talk about my failures, which is probably more important. One stock that is kind of like a success story that's more recently is this RCAT stock that I've been really kind of just buying very slowly. The reason why I started buying it slowly was when I was looking at the monthly Ichimoku, it broke above the cloud, backtest the cloud. I thought it was a good idea to buy around the backtest area here, so I started position around $5 or $6, and I just kept adding. I kept talking about RCAT and talking about how it's a good setup. And when I was buying up down here, it kept on going up, and I kept on averaging up. Whenever it gets above like 12 or so, I was hesitant to buy, because all these wicks above. Sure enough, it came back down to $6. Sure enough, it basically backtests this Adam and Eve double bottom area over here again. Sure enough, I was saying that it's a really good buying opportunity, and sure enough, people weren't happy about it. And sure enough, I don't really give a damn. So, in addition to back testing the zone, it was also touching the lower Bollinger Band here. Everybody's getting super scared, but it's all it's touching the lower Bollinger Band here on the weekly chart. It was also touching the rising 20-month moving average here on the monthly chart. It's also basically just back testing 0.707. A lot of things are going in favor for it. Did I end up having like down about 10-20% at some point? Sure, but does it matter? No, because price right now is in the mid-teens. So I think that's one of my other success stories there. Looking at another success story is really AMD. I was basically making a lot of these different calls, and again, my call may not have called the bottom, but I was on the right ballpark, right? You have price just kept going down on declining volume. Sometimes you keep having price go down on declining volume, you don't know how low it's going to go. Kind of like Tesla, I was going down on declining volume. I didn't know how low it's going to go, maybe 140s. Ultimately turned out to be the case. Was AMD going to go down lower, or was it going to find a bottom right around here? Who knows? But it's got some bullish divergence here with unbalanced volume. So I think that the risk-reward ratio is pretty decent. Now, a couple of things, when it comes to AMD, when I was looking through AMD and it was hitting the monthly cloud, I thought it could hold. Ultimately, ended up piercing down to the 70s and form a wick, and then the rest is history because right now it's like in the mid-200s. And it was falling. I was saying that AMD probably wants to hit the monthly cloud, and when it did, I think that the risk-reward ratio there is probably pretty decent. But I think a lot of people were probably very disillusioned by it. it bounced huge off of that level, off of the 70s. Huge reaction, V-shaped recovery all the way to the mid 100s. And we even a bigger reaction that pushed price all the way up to the 200, right? So what do you do at that point? I was urging to say not to buy the area because resistance is way outside the weekly bull in Japan. But I also thought that it was probably going to come back and touch the $200 zone around 0.86. And so it's not as overextended and then consolidate here before going up higher, right? A lot of people were scared because they think that the gap down here all the way down to 160 is going to get filled, right? A lot of people keep saying that this gap over here is going to get filled. And I was looking at it, I was like, you got a rising 20-week moving average here as support. I think this gap may stay as a virgin. I don't think it necessarily have to get filled. And I was pretty verbal about it. I mean, maybe I'm wrong eventually. Maybe the gap would end up getting closed, but it certainly doesn't seem like it will. This is AMD's chart right here. It looks like it's due a pretty decent reversal. Looks like a little bit of a Morningstar pattern over here. It looks like the gap down here is still widely open. There's another gap down here too. Do all gaps have to get filled? I never think that's going to be the case, especially when it went down straight for a whole year on declining volume, and this is just a reaction from that. So I would count that as another success story. A couple other ones that are going to be run by pretty quick. One is TQQQs. I'm just going to show where I accumulate TQQQs. I started buying a little bit too early, maybe around April, and I kept buying even all the way down here, especially when Jamie Dimon was saying that economic hurricane is coming. I would just buy. I bought this whole giant bottom over here. My cost average is around like 39.36. Sure enough, great. Okay, cool. Doomsday purchases over here around late 2023, whenever everybody was all scared. In October 2023, thinking it was going to go a little lower, I bought more TQQQs, right? Held through. Oh, I was an idiot because it came back to my cost basis over here back in April. And I guess what? I bought a little bit more on the way up here, and right now price, is at $100. It looks like it's trending. It looks like it's forming all-time high. So I mean, I think it's a success. I'm going to count that as a success. That's fine. Cloudflare is another one that I bought. I bought down here during this cup over here. Bought a little bit more during the dip. At some point, I thought I was an idiot down here because my cost average is in the 50s and it could go down to like the 40s, and it's just it was not fun, right? But I cannot not buy this cup over here. Whenever I see something that might be exiting stage 1 into stage 2, I just think that it's a good setup, right? So I end up buying more net. Cloudflare, nobody's really talking about Cloudflare anymore, which is kind of nuts to me actually. Silver. I talked about silver as a part of my 11 possible Palantarian candidates. It was one of my candidates, and a lot of people thought it was a little bit out of place. Why silver? It's just so different from everything else that you were saying. Well, the 3-month chart has full bullish expansion. It's breaking 0.76. It looks like it was going to do some great things, right? Silver right now is like all the way up here in like the 90s. Just probably within like 6 months since I started talking about it. Yeah, it's Palantiring. I mean, I think it's a pretty good call of mine. I'll take that as a win, right? And then finally, one that is a little personal here. I'm going to pull up that post here back in November of 2022. And I'll give you an idea of what happened in November 2022. It bottomed. There were quite a few things to say that Bitcoin probably had bottomed at that time. One reason why it was a good bottom was because it was really showing signs of deceleration of this downtrend. RSI was going up, price was going down. This is bullish divergence in the most classic way. I think it's okay to keep adding. Now, with that said, did I add perfectly? No, because I just told you I wasn't really charting in 2022. I was still pretty, euphoric. My positioning in Bitcoin was small back here. I had a position and I was riding all the way up here. A lot of influencers saying how Bitcoin is going to go to 6 figures right around October at the peak right there. I was one of those herd. I was listening and like, hey, it's cheap, whatever, right? next thing you know, came back down. A lot of influencers are saying, "Oh, this is a higher low. It's going to go a lot higher." I was listening. I didn't sell. Next thing you know, plummeted down. Guess what I ended up doing? I just kept buying. I kept buying all the way down here around the 20,000, all the way down to 15,000. And I started paying attention to the chart. I really thought that we were entering pretty much like the bottom area. I didn't always have my laser eyes on. I turned my laser eyes on November 9th, 2022, right at the bottom. Am I awesome for that? No. I think it's just disgusting that other people turn off their laser eyes right near the bottom. I don't think of me as whatever. I just think that they're disgusting. That's my view here. And sure enough, like the rest is history. Am I always right about Bitcoin? No. Was I bullish up here? Yeah, I mean, I was probably a little bit more bullish than I should be, because price dropped down 30%, right? I mean, how can you be bullish on Bitcoin, drop 30% and still expect this to be a bull market? Well, welcome to Bitcoin. That's all I have to say. A lot of people also calling this a bear flag right here. I'm being a little bit of a contrarian. I don't think it is. A lot of people think that this is the same exact area here as it was over here. There are quite a few reasons as to why I don't think that that's the case. But that's another story for another discussion, because I want to talk about my real pain and my real failures. Let's talk about it. Wow, I had to take a little bit of a break and drink some tea after going non-stop on 46 minutes on my successes. I'm going to try to go through my failures here a little bit more quickly. With that said, I cannot really go through it that quickly because my failure is also a journey. And it's important to share my journey with you if you're interested in what I'm saying here. This is Ethereum. It's my number one failure. The reason why it's my number one failure is because I've been bullish on it for years and it just hasn't really panned out. I was bullish on it really since around here, and I remember really buying Ethereum during this bull market, thinking that it was going to go a lot higher, thinking this is just a little bit of a higher low, and pretty much everybody at that point thought that it was going to go higher, with some exception, some contrarian think that it was going to go lower. A lot of people thought that it was going to go higher. A lot of people were starting talking about, extended bull cycle or whatever. In hindsight, it was kind of silly, not because the 4-year cycle is dogma, but because you also have a lot of weakness with stocks, with small caps, with things just looking like they're in distribution patterns here. It was kind of, silly to expect that they're just going to keep going up higher. I think we might be at a little bit of a different stage here. But anyway, regardless, it was a mistake on my part to be bullish on Ethereum throughout the entire time. I remember holding on to Ethereum from the peak over here, got some hopium over here. I remember Ethereum just plummeted non-stop for about 3 months. I remember going through this. And I remember whenever price got to about $1,000, around the mid 900s or whatever, around 800, I was seeing posts of people saying it's going to go to 700, it's going to go to 600, it's going to go to 500, it's going to go to 400. I muted those accounts. Like, I don't really follow it's pointless whenever people are saying that it's just going to go lower because it's low. Like, it's not, it's useless. But yeah, ultimately it went down here, and I was basically holding my bag down here. The worst part about holding here was that I also used to use an exchange called Voyager Digital, and Voyager Digital is an exchange that went bankrupt, and most of my Ethereum was not in Voyager Digital, but I did lose a few Ethereum tokens from the bankruptcy. So that was a big, giant failure on my part. If I did not have, I don't even know what cost average is anymore with Ethereum. That's the thing. Like, I lost Ethereum there from that bankruptcy. I continued to dollar cost average throughout the entire bottom over here. I continue to dollar cost average over here, and I continue to bull post on Ethereum throughout 2023. At the beginning of 2023, I was saying how Ethereum was probably one of the best investments to get into because of an Adam and Eve double bottom, because it looks like it was going to take off. Sure enough, it did, right? It did very well. And I also reiterated in 2024 that in January 2024 that it was going to do very well. Price went from around 2,000 all the way to like 4,000. It's just doubled within a couple months after I mentioned it. That was a genius. That was great. Yeah, buy. So I was buying through here. And it plummeted all the way down. It was like it's backtesting a zone over here. Buy more. Went back up. Yay, everything's going to the moon. Trump is in office, right? Wrong. Plummet. 1,300. That was extremely brutal, right? And I was trying to look in, where's it going to bottom? Is forming a lower low? Is it? I try to buy more here. There's only so much money, liquidity to go around. In April 2025, I was trying to buy other things like CIFR, IREN, and other stuff, but I just didn't have enough money to really buy that much Ethereum. But I was trending it because it was one of my biggest failure back here. In April 2025, I was like, I'm a failure. I don't, this sucks. And then from April 2025 on, recovery in a V-shaped recovery. And that was it, right? Making all-time high wick over here. That was it. Back test the horizontal zone over here. Moon we go, right? Nope. Decided to go and brutalize you for another few months. This is one of my biggest failures in terms of trying to figure out the technical analysis. I think the big part of the reason is because I think the cycle over here is just a lot longer than the cycle over here. Because if you look at what IWM is doing, you can also see very, very clearly that IWM, this base here is a lot shorter than this one. This base here is extremely long. This base here is a lot smaller. IWM is the small cap stocks usually. It tells you a pretty good idea in terms of what liquidity does in the US in terms of stock market or things like that. So looking at that, it really does make me feel that, hey, I think I was too early, too often on Ethereum, and I was wrong. It's the biggest failure. Should I have sold? Should I sell on my Ethereum right now because the 4-year cycle is over? Because no, like I think it's a mistake. There's a difference between being wrong and being stubborn because I was wrong and therefore I need to do something different. I think there's a big distinguishment between the two. I cannot sell here when IWM is making all-time highs. Like I just cannot. This is a breakout over here. I cannot do that, right? I think that the most reasonable thing to do, and during the last cycle, like it was different because when Ethereum was correcting, IWM was also correcting, and this is a clear distribution pattern over here. Whereas right now you're dealing with an accumulation pattern followed by a breakout. So if the stock market liquidity is showing you that things are going to look okay, I think that there should be enough liquidity to enter back into Ethereum, and I think Ethereum's probably also going to do okay. It generally lags IWM by a couple months. I think it's fine. I can wait. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But that's the thing. I've been wrong so many times, and it also turned out to be fine at the end. I was just showing you like 15 examples of my successes that at some point were failures. I can afford to be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I had enough successes that I'm okay because I don't need to be right all the time. That is a failure, but that is not something that I'm really truly necessarily giving up on. Another big failure that I've had is Coinbase. With Coinbase, it is one of those that has been extremely brutalizing. And I think the reason why Coinbase has been extremely brutalizing, I think Coinbase just tracks Ethereum, to be honest with you. Like if I put the two charts here side by side, I get rid of all these drawing over here. I put the two charts here on the monthly side by side, that with Ethereum. And I do the monthly chart here, get rid of all this arrow. They're the same charts. They are the same exact charts, right? With the exception, actually, I think Coinbase actually held the April scare here relatively well. But they're the exact same chart. They follow each other very well. So if I'm bullish on Ethereum, I cannot be bearish on Coinbase. That is basically my thinking. I can come up with all kinds of reasons as to why I think Coinbase is going to do well. I can tell you that like AMD, that just kept on selling off for a whole year on declining volume. And the lower AMD gets, the better risk reward ratio it was. Start getting bullish on AMD around like $110 or $100, and it kept going down to the 70s. Now it's in the mid 200s. I can envision very similar things happening with Coinbase right now as we speak, right? How low does this low get? Is this going to be a higher low compared to here still? Is it going to be a lower low? Is the bull market over? Are we going down to zero? On declining volume, I don't know. Here, sell off on declining volume, reverses quickly within 3 months. Selling here on declining volume for about 7 months, reverses quickly in just 1 month. I find that the risk reward ratio here for Coinbase is still good, although nobody wants to hear about it because I was wrong. And I think it's okay. You don't have to listen to anybody who got a little bit too bullish at different levels or whatever, because they can always sell things off on declining volume, and nobody really knows how low things can go on declining volume. Price went all the way from like the 400s all the way down to where, to 200. It could go lower. Nobody wants to hear anything bullish about it. That's the reality. But the reality is that I'm still not really seeing anything drastic for me to change my stance, which is hard to communicate, because if it's a mistake, I should admit to my mistake and I should move on. And I did admit to my mistake and I did move on, and the move that I'm doing is nothing. Actually, I take that back. The move that I'm doing is to buy more. I don't know if I'm right or not. To me, it doesn't really matter. In addition to buying coin, I also ended up buying CoinL. CoinL was also a big mistake, because I did end up round tripping. My average right now is like round 22, maybe around like a little lower than 22, right? I bought down here, and it goes down. I bought more here, it goes down again. I bought more. So yeah, I'm underwater right now. I'm probably around like 40% down or something like that. At some point, this thing was like in the 70s. So I round tripped it, right? Because it's double leverage, you're gonna have a lot of decay. That's the reality. Like I completely accept that. It's a smaller position of mine. My Coinbase, non-leveraged Coinbase shares is a lot more. Is a lot more than my double leverage, right? So yeah, that was a little bit of a gambling there. It hasn't really worked out very well for me because I really thought that it was going to go a lot higher, maybe just back to the zone and then just go higher from there. Nope, did not work out to be the case. Am I still giving up on Coinbase? Should I give up on Coinbase where it is right now? On declining volume, I'm gonna keep holding. I'm gonna keep buying here. So that is another failure that I have. Another failure, you might as well just talk about all the other stuff, right? BMNR. Where did I start buying BMNR? Well, I started buying BMNR, really started around like the 30s to 40s up here somewhere. Because I just think that it was probably a good area to start accumulating. Sure enough, price came all the way down to like the 20s. And right now it's still in the 20s. So I'm down a bit, like maybe like 30% underwater. But I've been keep on accumulating this pretty decent formation here with a double bottom. It looks like it's on the verge of potential breakout. If you look at the order block over here, you see that they're buying pressure over here, but I'm still down. This is still a failure of mine, and I have to share it, because it sucks. It sucks so bad. I'm so terrible. This is making me so sad. BTCS, another Ethereum treasury play. I ended up entering this maybe a little bit too early, probably around like the high 3s to low 4s. I'm still buying every week. I'm down maybe like 20-30%. I don't know. I'm buying this double bottom over here. If you zoom out, this looks like an extremely beautiful setup, because if you zoom out, you can see that it's just been forming bull flag after bull flag after bull flag after bull flag. All it takes is for a correction like this. All it takes for a reverse is just 1 month of high volume candle to come in. And you've been selling off on low volume. So the lower it gets, the more, the better risk reward ratio is for me. with that said, yeah, it sucks. It just keeps on going down for months. Oh man, like the investing. Why am I even listening to this Cantonese cat guy? Like he sucks. He sucks. You know, I suck. I know. You know, I'm buying anyway. That's just the way. That's just the way it goes because I don't really think that being right or wrong matters that much. I think it matters more whether or not to have a plan. Here's another one that sucks. I started buying BTBT for a long time. My average is probably around like the high twos, maybe around three, somewhere around there, because I've just been buying this range and it's just been doing nothing for 2 years, and I'm so wrong. It's just consolidating sideways over here, and now that the 4-year cycle is over, it's going to go down for sure, right? I'm not sure about that, but I think that if anything, this has just been range bound, building a lot of energy. I guess if they're also essentially Ethereum treasury, so if you're bullish on Ethereum, you cannot be bearish on BTBT really. So I still hold it. I still have a decent number of shares. I still hold it, and I'm just gonna let it be. It is what it is. Okay. Another one that is related to, and this is not really that big of a failure because I think it's already kind of recovering, but it was a failure nevertheless. You remember how I was chasing IREN, right? You remember how I was chasing IREN on the way up, and that worked out very well for me. Well, I was also kind of chasing GLXY Digital. My average right now is around the mid-20s, and I kept buying whenever it's up to like the low the low 30s to mid 30s. I stopped buying when it get to the 40s. I think that was a ridiculous area to buy because it was way outside the monthly Bollinger Band. That's not a good area to buy. But I kept buying in the 30s, and and then guess what? When it dipped down here below 30 again, I continued to accumulate because I just think this is a higher low type situation. But for a while, like the sentiment is just really euphoric, and I was wrong here for many months. When it dipped down all the way from like 40 something to 20 something, and people were saying, "You still bullish on this, man?" I'm like, yeah, I'm more bullish around like $27 than I was up here in the 40s. Because you're trying to find a higher low over here. I don't know how low it gets, but that's a great buying opportunity because this is a bull trend, right? I have a hard, it's just broke above the Ichimoku cloud. You know, everything is looking bullish on a higher time frame. But I was an extreme failure for about 3 months. Especially since I was calling this thing to potentially go Palantiring because the Bollinger Band was expanding, because this was breaking through the 0.86 over here. But guess what? Came back down close to 0.786 anyway, and it just ended up doing nothing for months. And Bollinger Band contracted again, but it was way outside the upper Bollinger Band. Now it's back inside the upper Bollinger Band, but the upper Bollinger Band is expanding. I think it's going to be more room for it to go up. It's healthy, but guess what? Nobody wants to hear that because I was wrong for 2 months. I still ended up buying more on GLXY Digital. If this thing ends up flying up there, I'm going to show you my accumulation range and things like that in the future. I just don't feel like showing my portfolio or anything like that. At this point, I'm still waiting for it to do something so I can claim clout or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But that's what happened with GLXY Digital. Now, another pain point that I'm known for. Another very painful stock that I'm known for is CleanSpark. What CleanSpark did ultimately, and what CleanSpark is doing right now, ultimately, in my opinion, is healthy. With that said, nobody wants to hear that. Matter of fact, I think a lot of people already have lost a lot of interest with CleanSpark, and they got really, really interested whenever price went up to here, right into the 0.786 resistance, right into the Ichimoku cloud resistance, right? I was very excited too, because it looks like we closed a month inside the Ichimoku cloud, right? It looks like it could have been at some point in the verge of breaking out through the 0.786 and go higher. The momentum was undeniable, but it basically hit a wall. And the wall was so difficult to pass through that I made a mistake. I made a mistake calling this, calling all these different tries here to break free Ichimoku Cloud that is spending a lot of time to try to push through, and that the resistance would get weaker and weaker over time. That was wrong. That was distribution, and that was a cooldown that was much necessary after a big move like that. I bought CleanSpark around $8. That's when I started my position. And whenever it got up to the cloud here, I stopped. I didn't really want to buy. I bought the bottom of this range over here because I thought it was just a range bound. This maybe like a bull flag is going to push through after a while. But it was clearly distribution because all these wicks above. Right? That was a mistake. I thought that the blue line support here is going to hold. That was a mistake. Ultimately, it broke down, right, and went down a lot lower. Created another ABC, correction all the way down to the single digits, right? That was extremely brutal because I bought at $8 because I bought at the low teens. I bought down here as well around $8 here again, $8 or $9 here again, and I tried to buy a little bit more, but I just didn't have enough money to buy. Like back in April 2025, I was buying other things. So yeah, it sucks. My average right now is maybe like $10 because it gave me more opportunity to buy. And as it was pushing through, hey, it was challenging the cloud here. Could we push through the cloud and just go a lot higher? No, I decided to come back and get close to the bottom of the cloud here again, and back test bottom of the cloud here. This is extremely healthy, by the way, because it's building up a huge base over here. If this is a cup and handle pattern, which it is, the reason why I think it is because if you are, actually, we're going to do a fib level, because if you are looking from this top over here to that bottom over here, it retraces all the way down to 0.5 log fib. This is a perfect handle into 0.5. It's extremely healthy, right? Breakthrough couldn't break through the 0.86, come back down, trying to back test the 0.618 bounced. Right now it's trying to break about the 0.786 here again. This is a pretty healthy stock, right? Cup and handle. And it's a bullish formation. So like I would love to still be in this, even though I've been wrong for about 2 years. Is it okay to be wrong for about 2 years? Well, I don't care what you think. I think it's okay to be wrong. But if I'm wrong, should I stay wrong in saying that this is still a bullish formation? Depends on whether or not this is a bullish formation or not, right? Not because of like pride or, like the way to correct a mistake to me is not to lose your conviction and go somewhere else, but to just continue to assess whether or not this is still a good setup, and maybe I missed something, and to come up with a strategy in terms of what I should do next. My strategy ended up being, bought here, bought down here, bought more down here, cost average around $10. I'm just gonna let it be and let it do whatever. That's my plan for CleanSpark, and I'm gonna basically stick with it, even though it's been a big pain point of mine. Mara. Man. Mara. It's been an extremely brutalizing stock for me to talk about and for me to hold. I have been very wrong based on looking at this being a potential bullish formation, and it still make another ABC down. It's been doing extremely poorly for 2 years in a row. It's been absolutely horrible. The question now is, what are you going to do about it? The question now would be, am I just going to keep trying to call this like some kind of bullish formation? Oh, like as you see, this is a bullish formation. Let's just look, it's just channeling down, guys. Like this is a wedge. Is consolidating, is going to do its thing. Whenever it's done doing its thing, it's going to go up, right? I can draw all kinds of lines. I can do all kinds of things. I can show you that institutions have been accumulating Mara like crazy. But just the simple fact it hasn't done anything but going down over the last 2 years. A lot of these kind of falls break out and just ends up plummeting all the way back down here. Makes you really seriously doubt your thesis, right? Just like whenever price end up making a huge move up to the 30s over here, there are some people who are saying it went way too far, way too fast. Maybe I should sell here. Well, price just kept on going up here. It made you doubt your thesis, right? The way I see it is this. I actually have been in Mara from the last bull cycle. I did not buy up here, but I actually had some buys like right around there and right up higher, right? I did sell about half of my Mara on the way down here whenever things get just really scary back in like January of 2022. I sold half of my Mara shares. I kept the other half to see what it did. I did not chart at that time. I was just going to let it do its thing. Boom, 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 right? Did I buy more down here? No, because I was focusing on other things like Palantir and whatnot. I thought it was just going to be like, I don't know how low it's going to go, right? I'm just going to let it be. I became more bullish on the way up here around the teens, around $8. Whenever it came back down here, I thought it was a good buying opportunity. I took it, went up higher. I was very happy until I'm not for the next 2 years. This has been a very painful journey. And after this painful journey, I asked myself what I should do. Should I sell here at, single digits? My answer is no. My answer is, I think, based on looking at liquidity, based on looking at the formation, based on looking at what potentially could be the elite wave formation, I still think that there is a thesis that I have, and it may sound completely crazy to you. If you look at elite waves, usually you have 5 waves up and then 2 waves down, right? I think that Mara has played out extremely well. And then if you have 5 waves up and 2 waves down, usually that could be wave 1 and wave 2. And then you have wave 3, which is the longest and the biggest of them all. And you have wave 4 with a correction, and wave 5 just kept going. And that would be the end of like the overall higher time frame cycle. Right? I think this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very clear. I think this is ABC. I think this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think this is, a little bit of a prolonged ABC here. This is a very, very long ABC here. With that said, this is maybe wave 1 of higher time frame degree. This is wave 2 of the higher time frame degree. There is a potential, and it's probably completely stupid for me to say that because it hasn't really shown us any reaction at all that that's going to be the case. There's a potential that this is still wave 3. And this is sub 1, sub 2, and we're waiting for the big wave 3 to come. I don't know whether or not it's going to come or not. I do not. I'm just going to say I don't know anything, right? But I still think that there is a potential for that to work out. And at this point, because I've been in it for so long, because I have Palantir, Tesla, SoFi, Shopify, Robinhood, Affirm, NVDA, IREN, SOFI, CIFR, RCAT, TQQQ, Cloudflare, Bitcoin. I have so many things that have done well for me over the years. I've decided, hey, let's just let it play out. I could be wrong, but that's okay. That's where I'm at with Mara. And it's not easy to talk about, but those are my thoughts, right? Very quickly, I can show you a lot of other stuff, and I'll talk about some of the other major ones here. And I eye this stock here. This is quantum computing, QUBT. Start getting into it around here, whenever it looks like a very beautiful, cup and handle type pattern. Very happy it was about to break out. So my average right now is around like $17-18, right? Yeah. Made it look lower. That's brutal. That sucks. Cup and handle failure. Didn't break out. Came back down. Right. Forming a pretty decent formation over here with double bottom. Maybe about to break out this trend line. I continue with the dollar cost average because I still see this being a higher time frame bull trend. I still see this whole thing as like a bull flag. And I still see that it's been quite a few months trying to break about the resistance zone over here. And it has to come back down and try to grab some liquidity and try to break through again. So I'm DCing, I'm dollar cost averaging into it. I'm not throwing all my money at it or anything like that. But I just still think this is a relatively decent setup here. especially since the sell volume over here is significantly declined. I think that we're at a good spot to potentially reverse the trend back up again after 3 or 4 months of correction. But yeah, we'll see. There's no guarantee here. Another one is RXRX. I've been accumulating for a very long time. I think I started buying like around the 7s. The reason why I start buying around the 7s is because I really started to see volume picking up here. And I thought it was going to break out. No, got rejected here. Came all the way back down to a lower level. Guess what though? Volume continues to even higher compared to before. This really looks like a Wyckoff accumulation pattern over here. This really just looks like a complex spring over here. And this whole thing over here looks like it's like an accumulation zone. So because I was wrong here, because I started my position around the 6 and 7s, it dropped all the way down here, it doesn't mean I'm wrong. Yeah, it means I was wrong. Am I wrong to continue to accumulate? Maybe. Should you wait for confirmation, you know, like what my friend Danny would do until whales come in to confirm that before going higher? Maybe. I just decided that this is a pretty decent Wyckoff. I just decided to add very slowly. And I think that the risk down here is relatively low, even though the CEO is left, you know, whatever. I just think that it's still, you know, playing out, and I'm willing to wait. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Same rationale as the other things, right? If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I think it's okay. But it's still too early to tell. A couple other ones here, TIGR. What's going on with TIGR? Well, I don't think this is really like a failure. I think that is considered a failure because a lot of people got bitter from the recent downtrend that it did. A lot of people think that it was just going to break out in the teens and it went all the way down to the $8 and I must suck, right? And this must be because I'm wrong, right? Well, maybe. I'll tell you what I did with TIGR. I started a position somewhere around like the 6s, and I just kept dollar cost averaging up until it was $10 and I stopped buying. The reason why I stopped buying was because I thought that it probably could benefit from a little bit of a higher low. I just don't know how low the high low is going to get. Plus, it was getting to 0.618. That's going to be resistance, right? It could come back down to $10, and I think everything that comes back below $10, I would buy more. And I am still buying more, but a lot of people got just extremely bitter. Just the very fact that I talk about this stock in the low teens, it plumbed all the way down to like $8 or $7. They just, yeah, I guess I was wrong, right? Selling off over here on declining volume, though, I think it's a pretty decent setup. I would buy here. I've been buying because it's less than $10. I just keep it simple, right? But yeah, I guess I was wrong. I guess it's okay, though. I'm not giving up on it or anything like that. It is what it is. If I'm wrong, but it is what it is. RIVN. Do I think that this is a good setup? I think this is a beautiful setup. I was buying it down here like around $13-14 because this looks like a big ascending triangle. Looks like it's going to break out. Right now we have a back test of that ascending triangle. It looks pretty healthy here so far. A lot of people think that it's going to plummet all the way down to the single digits again. I just don't really see it. Am I wrong? I don't know. Does it matter though? If you're looking at the Bollinger Band, initially I was saying, hey, squeezing here, expanding here, it could break out. Decided to do a back test here. I think it's okay. Matter of fact, I actually love that it come back down because I think that this is still a pretty decent setup. And I'm going to keep buying whenever price is underneath $20 to try to accumulate more because it looks like a very beautiful base formation, ascending triangle, breakout back test. Sometimes the back test can go lower. Sometimes the back test can go back down to the line down here. And if it does, I'll buy more. I completely accept that. So that's being a possibility. Do I think that there is a low probability event of it going down to single digits? Probably unlikely. I don't expect that. If it happens, then I'm very, very wrong. But so far, the formation still looks intact. So I am still in it. But yeah, I just wanted to share with you. This is one of my failures, if you will. GME. How wrong was I? Let's talk about it. There has been absolutely no volume at all ever since this May of 2024 candle that pushed into a higher high compared to over here. Since then, there's been absolutely no volume at all. They've just been whipsawing this thing on sideways here. a few notable things on GME is that it hasn't really been following news at all in terms of the whole overall macro environment. The scary part was in August 2024. It didn't really dip down that much when the overall market dipped down a lot. The other scary time was back in April of 2025. IWM went down like 60% or something like that with this lick down. GME basically bounced off, right? It wasn't really following the overall market, and it's just been basically forming a little bit of a triangle over here on declining volume. The initial thought was, as long as it flipped the negative sloping 20-month moving average into a positive sloping 20-month moving average and it continues to hold, then this is a bull trend developing, right? This is a bull trend developing, right? Resistance, support. Well, it doesn't always work out that way because so far it's broken down underneath the 20-month moving average on declining volume. It also has a morning star pattern over here that really should mean that it should go up a lot higher. No, it decided to go down below the 20-month moving average. Now you're having a bullish band squeeze. Now a big move is coming. Now price is underneath the 20-month moving average. What should I expect? I don't know. I have a position. My cost average is somewhere in the high 20s. You know, I would not buy up here in the 30s. I mean, my position is somewhere around, like, I think it was like maybe 28 or something like that. So I've just been letting it sit because I think it's there's no volume over here. Last time before it broke out, it also consolidated sideways over here for a long time. And it delayed behind Russell 2000 breakout by about a few months before this big giant candle. The big giant candle here is January 2021. IWM Russell 2000 broke out in November 2020. I think it's fine to just sit here and just kind of let it do its thing. It's right now is more or less also a Bitcoin treasury as well, and Bitcoin hasn't really been doing that well. So it depends on a lot of things, but I see a big move coming, and I lean more bullish, even though the evidence show otherwise right now, because there's no volume, because I think that this stock runs with liquidity. And because this stock has been behaving extremely weirdly and not breaking down during times when the entire stock market was breaking down. So I'm willing to just let it sit. It's a small position. I'm willing to just let it sit. But I was wrong on GME. I was very wrong on GME. Guess what I was also very wrong on? I was also very wrong on this Dogecoin thing, you know. Like, I made a video about how Dogecoin is going to go to like $4. And the reason why I thought that Dogecoin is going to go to $4 is this. If you do a little bit of a retracement from the cycle top up here, if I can do that, if you do a little bit of retracement from the cycle top here to the next cycle top here, you can see that the last cycle went all the way to the 2.272. So the idea is this cycle, well, it made a huge gain. The market cap is huge. So I don't think it's going to go to 2.272 this time. Right, I think there's going to be a diminishing return. I think it's going to maybe go to like 1.618. Where's the 1.618 at? $4. Could it stop the bull cycle before that? Could it be at $2 or $1.50? Sure, right? That's the whole thought behind that, and so far it's been showing a beautiful cup over here, and this is a bullish formation, right? With a handle over here too that went all the way down to the 0.382 from the top over here. It decided it wanted to make an ABC correction, which makes me think that this is wave 1, wave 2, and wave 3 is about to come. Is this a valid wave 2? Well, it could be. If you are looking at this being 1 and this being 0, sometimes the ABC correction on wave 2 goes all the way to the 0.382, which is exactly where it stopped. The corrections are happening on declining volume to no volume, right? Down. All it takes is just some volume for you to reverse the trend down. All it takes is some volume to reverse the trend. So far, we've been going and selling off on low volume. This is very much AMDing for me, in like it did back in 2025, 24, 25, whatever. It's just been going down on declining volume. So it doesn't really take a whole lot to reverse this, and so far the formation is still bullish. So I lean bullish on Dogecoin. Is it stupid to lean bullish on Dogecoin for so long? Because it's been a bear market for about a whole year now. Well, depends. It's stupid if I was euphoric and spent all my money and try to buy at 50 cents. But I really started accumulating around like 6 cents or something like that. I bought on the way up, I bought on the way down. I bought on the way up here, decided not to buy here, bought more down here, and I bought more down here, and I'm still buying it right now. I am not entirely, giving up on it or whatever. I still think that it is still a decent setup, even though I was wrong. There's a duality there that I think needs to be addressed, and I have to admit that I'm not very good. So I actually don't know why you're listening to me right now. I could be wrong on the next step too, right? But I have to rationalize it to try to figure out why it is that I think I may not be wrong moving forward, and why is it that I'm not selling it. I've sold stocks before. I announce them when I do. I've sold crypto before, and I usually announce it if I do. But so far, I actually don't find it reasonable to try to sell Dogecoin here based on what I'm looking at. And I could be completely wrong on that. Finally, I got really excited about this FARTCOIN thingy, because whenever Dogecoin, well, not Dogecoin, whenever Ethereum looks like it could break out, there should be enough liquidity to kind of rotate into other stuff. And FARTCOIN was one of those things that like, yeah, I think it could be fun to own some FARTCOIN, because it could go up if you have a lot of liquidity coming in. If you have IWM making all-time high, there's enough liquidity coming in, yay, right? So, well, guess what? Ethereum couldn't break out, so FARTCOIN got rejected, and it basically just came all the way down here. My cost average of FARTCOIN right now is around like 64 cents. Right now, FARTCOIN is like 28 cents. So I'm down about 55-60% so far. Am I down and out? No, I'm not down and out. I actually continue to have a position. I think I'm going to hold. I think it's going to do well moving forward. I think that this big giant push down is probably healthy, and it did end up deleveraging a lot. And I still remain more bullish on it moving forward, because I'm bullish on the overall market, because I'm bullish on liquidity, because I think that the risk for altcoins now is lower than it has ever been. So I maintain a position in FARTCOIN and am willing to wait out any potential diabolic moves that it might make. With that said, I do want to share a final post here about altcoins that I have posted on X. And the final move is this. There is something called Others Dominance. Others is basically a chart that tells you the overall cryptocurrency market cap that belongs to altcoins outside of the top 10, right? Others Dominance tells you the percentage of crypto that doesn't belong to the top 10. I think a lot of people are charting this and thinking this is like a head and shoulder pattern, that altcoins could keep going plummet down to zero, and that they're not going to be that relevant for the entire cryptocurrency space anymore. I actually think it's a pretty clean elite wave. This looks like wave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is ABC correction, which fits well because a lot of altcoins have actually been in bear market for like 4 years. If that's the ABC correction here, then I think we might be getting ready for an expansion of altcoins coming. So that is the duality that I'm talking about. I'm not sure if I'm right but the risk down here seems low. I could keep on being wrong, and I'm okay with that. This goes along with Ethereum. This goes along with Coinbase, Mara, CleanSpark, Dogecoin, BMNR, BTCS. A lot of things that people get very, very bitter on. I can handle the bitterness. I can handle the volatility. I can handle my own portfolio. I'm still trying to figure out how to handle y'all's emotions, because I kind of learned to handle mine. And there's no right way or wrong way to do this. I shouldn't say I don't care about your emotions. I just don't think your emotions matter to your portfolio. I just don't think your emotions should be something that drives anything. I don't really care to validate your emotions when it comes to the market. In other sense, I can validate your emotions in a lot of different ways, but I just don't care to validate your emotions in the market, because I don't think that's going to help you. And it hasn't really been helping me. I've seen time and time again that it basically clouds your judgment when it comes to risk and reward. And I am just going to stay in my lane and keep doing me. And I hope you do the best you can. But yeah, I'm going to deny your emotions. And that's just kind of how I think I should operate based on current situation of risk-reward ratios. Anyway, I spent about an hour and a half yapping. It's like about half an hour more than my usual video. So if you're still listening, I don't know why you are. I haven't even talked about macro yet. I want to talk about what I think about the macro. I want to give an update on that. I haven't even gotten around to it. It doesn't matter. I have just been talking and sharing thoughts, and this has been extremely therapeutic for me. And I hope that this helps you. If it doesn't help you, thanks for listening anyway. I hope I put you to sleep. Alright guys, thanks so much for listening. Have a good one. Bye.